If love makes you cry more than it makes you smile, then maybe it's not love. That was Ada's life. Everyone in her neighborhood believed she was lucky married to a man like Femi. He drove fine cars, spoke with confidence, and never forgot to wear a smile in public. But at home, behind those expensive doors, his smile disappeared. He insulted Ada for everything, her cooking, her dress, her voice. If she laughed too loud, he said she was childish. If she stayed quiet, he said she was boring. Ada started walking on eggshells in her own house. Each night, she prayed quietly on her bed, God, please change him. But every morning, she woke up to another day of pain, dressed as love. Femi's favorite weapon wasn't his hand, it was his tongue. And with every cruel word, he broke something inside Ada that no one could see. That was when Ada realized love can look beautiful from far away, but feel like prison up close. If lies could smile, they would look like Femi. He was the man every woman wanted. At church, he carried babies, hugged old women, and spoke gently to the pastor. Neighbors called him a good husband. Ada would force a smile and say, yes, he is. But deep down, she was dying a little each day. At home, Femi became someone else. He shouted over little things, called her useless, and said she was lucky he married her. When Ada tried to talk, he twisted her words until she ended up apologizing. He wanted everything perfect, his food, his shirts, his home, yet nothing Ada did was ever enough. When her friends visited, Femi turned into the sweetest man alive. He brought them drinks, made jokes, and held Ada's hand. But the moment they left, his face changed. You were showing off too much, he said coldly. That night, Ada cried quietly, realizing that the man everyone loved was just a mask. If sorry was magic, Ada would have healed long ago. One evening, Femi shouted at her because the stew had too much salt. He threw the plates, and it shattered across the floor. Ada stood frozen, her hands trembling. Minutes later, he walked up to her, sighed, and said softly, I'm sorry, babe. You just make me angry sometimes. Ada felt hope. She hugged him, thinking maybe he truly meant it. He bought her a small gift the next day, a new phone. She smiled again, believing love had returned. But within a week, he changed. He began ignoring her calls, insulting her friends, and controlling her every move. That was the pattern hurt her. Apologize, then hurt her again. And each time, Ada forgave him, thinking love meant patience. She didn't know she was trapped in a circle that would keep turning until she broke. If a man starts isolating you, he's not protecting you, he's trapping you. Femi didn't want Ada talking to anyone. He said her friends were bad influences. He made her block her old classmates, even her cousin. Slowly, Ada's world became smaller, just her, Femi, and silence. When she told him she missed her mom, he said, you don't need your mother, you have me. Soon, she stopped visiting her family. On her birthday, nobody called because nobody could reach her anymore. Ada's life turned into a quiet routine. Cook, clean, obey, and stay quiet. She forgot what laughter sounded like. One day, her mother came to visit unannounced. Femi smiled and welcomed her warmly, acting like the perfect son-in-law. But when she left, he locked the door and hissed, don't ever bring anyone here without telling me. Ada nodded, holding back tears. She was no longer a wife. She was a prisoner in a fine house. Femi had a way of twisting things. If Ada said he shouted, he'd laugh and say, you're overreacting. If she cried, he'd tell her she was too emotional. Soon, Ada began to question her own mind. Once, he forgot her birthday. When she reminded him, he said, you never told me your birthday. Ada knew she did twice, but he said it so confidently that she began to doubt herself. He called her crazy, lazy, dramatic. Every insult made her feel smaller. Ada would stand in front of the mirror, whispering, maybe I'm really the problem. But deep down, something inside her still fought to stay alive, a tiny voice saying, no, this is not love. That voice was the only thing keeping her from disappearing completely. If the devil wore a suit, he'd smile like Femi at family events. At Ada's cousin's wedding, Femi held her hand, took pictures, even fed her cake in front of everyone. You're lucky, her cousin whispered. He loves you so much. Ada smiled weakly. They didn't know that just before the event, he'd called her an embarrassment because her dress wasn't classy enough. On their way home, he shouted, "Did you see how your cousin's wife looked? That's how a real woman should dress." Ada sat quietly, her eyes wet, pretending to sleep to avoid another fight. That night, she realized Femi didn't love her. He loved how people saw him. He didn't need a wife. He needed an audience. And Ada was tired of playing his favorite role. If silence could kill, Ada would already be gone. She stopped arguing. She stopped asking questions. She stopped smiling. Every time she spoke, it turned into a fight, so she stopped speaking. Femi noticed. He said, "You're boring these days." Ada wanted to say, "You killed the fun part of me," but she just nodded. She began to live like a shadow, quiet, obedient, invisible. But one evening, when Femi insulted her in front of his friend, something inside Ada cracked. She went into the bathroom, locked the door, and cried until she couldn't breathe. She looked in the mirror and whispered, "Who am I?" She didn't know anymore. That was the night Ada decided that one day, somehow, she would leave. If you sleep beside someone who breaks you, your soul never rests. Femi was beside her every night, yet Ada felt lonelier than ever. His touch felt cold, his words felt empty. She started pretending to sleep early just to avoid his voice. Sometimes he'd hold her, other times he'd push her away. Her body was in the same house, but her heart had already packed its bags. One rainy night, he accused her of cheating because she smiled at the delivery man. She said, "I was just being polite." He shouted, "Don't argue with me." Ada sat in the corner, shaking. She realized she wasn't in love anymore, she was surviving. If truth hides too long, it will find its own way out. Ada started writing in a small diary, the one place Femi couldn't control. Every night, she wrote her pain in silence. He shouted again. I cried again. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Writing became her secret strength. One morning, Femi found it. He laughed after reading her words. "So now you're writing stories about me?" He tore the diary and threw it away. But Ada smiled faintly, because by then, the stories were already written inside her heart, and he couldn't tear that apart. If you ever see a small door open, walk through it. Ada got a part-time job at a fashion shop near Yaba. Femi didn't like it, but she lied, saying it was volunteer work. For the first time in years, she felt air. She met new people. She laughed again. Her boss, a kind woman named Grace, noticed her sadness. "You're too quiet, Ada. You have a beautiful smile. Don't hide it." That compliment felt strange, like a lost piece of her was coming back. Each day at work reminded her that life outside Femi's control still existed. And one evening, while folding clothes, Ada whispered, "I'm stronger than he thinks." If a heart breaks too many times, it stops begging to be fixed. That night, Femi slapped Ada for answering a call too late. She didn't cry this time. She just stared at him, silent. He shouted, waiting for her to react, but she didn't. Something inside her had gone quiet, not out of fear, but out of freedom. When he slept, Ada packed a small bag and left the house. She didn't take much, just her ID, a few clothes, and the courage she'd buried for years. As she walked down the street, barefoot and trembling, she whispered, "I'm done. If pain teaches you anything, it's that you deserve peace." Ada moved in with her friend Grace. She slept on a couch, but she felt peace for the first time. She found a job as a receptionist and began saving. She started smiling again, started praying again. Sometimes she'd see couples holding hands on the street and feel sad, but she reminded herself that she was free. She promised never to go back to the house that almost killed her spirit. If you walk away from pain, pain will still try to find you. One morning, Femi showed up at her workplace with flowers. He begged her to come home. He said he had changed. Ada looked into his eyes and saw the same emptiness. Femi, she said calmly, you don't love me, you love control. He got angry, slammed the flowers on the table, and left. Everyone stared, but Ada didn't cry. That day, she realized she no longer feared him, she pitied him. If freedom had a sound, it would be Ada's laughter. Months passed. Ada moved into her own small apartment. She started attending church again, joined a women's group, and shared her story to help others. Each time she spoke, her voice grew stronger. She learned to forgive herself not for leaving, but for staying so long. One Sunday morning, she looked in the mirror and smiled. I'm Ada, she said softly. I'm back. If you ever wonder what healing looks like, it looks like Ada dancing in her living room, barefoot, smiling. She met someone new months later, a gentleman named David. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't control her. He just listened. When he said you're beautiful, she believed it not because he said it, but because she finally saw it herself. Ada didn't need a perfect man anymore. She needed peace. And in that peace, she found happiness, not the kind that depends on someone else, but the kind that comes from loving yourself after being broken. Love should never hurt. Real love is gentle, it builds, it heals, it gives peace. But when love becomes a cage, when someone uses their words to control, shame, or silence you, that is not love, that is bondage. No woman or man deserves to live in fear just to prove loyalty. Sometimes, walking away doesn't mean you've given up, it means you've chosen yourself. Because peace, freedom, and self-worth are worth more than a toxic love story. Let Ada's story remind you that you are enough and you deserve a love that brings light, not pain. If Ada's story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more emotional stories that heal, teach, and inspire. Your support means a lot. It helps us share more stories that open hearts and change lives. Subscribe today because every story we tell carries a truth someone needs to hear.